let's talk about school suspensions, because the Department of Education in New South Wales, well, it's trying to think about whether or not too many kids are being suspended. Now, what feels very weird is that I think this actually is an insight into just how massive the problem of ill discipline is in schools, because let's be honest, it is very hard to get a kid in trouble these days, let alone to get them in trouble enough that they get suspended. So imagine the actual number of kids who deserve to be suspended, and then have a look at this. The Department of Education is putting its suspension rates under the microscope as part of a wide-ranging review into discipline policies in public schools. 40% of public school students, or 32 and a bit thousand, have received short-term suspensions last year. Sorry, 4. Did I say 40? Apologies. I went to a public school. With more than 9,000 of them in primary school. I have to own, I was suspended twice in high school and absolutely deserved it. And it wasn't for those things they do in private schools. Oh, it was for actual bad stuff. Scott, would you agree with my summation that that number is massive? Firstly, it's a football stadium of kids, a small football stadium, but still one nonetheless, of primary school kids, and it's even harder to discipline kids these days. So the actual number of offences that are happening that are discipline worthy would be multiples of that number. Yet, when the number you don't like it, do what they do with the NAPLAN tests in Victoria. Change the test.
Look, I have to confess, I went to 10 schools growing up, not being kicked out of all of them. Look, and you think about what it was like. I went through schools at every kind of brand and possible variation of schools around, and in terms of my sense of it, as an MP, particularly when I used to go to schools, it's much harder to get kicked out of a school, get suspended at the moment. So the numbers of misbehaving students must be massive at the moment. But it comes back to me always is in terms of, again, teachers, principals can only do so much. It's the reality here is this growing and constant view by some parents that the school's job is to show discipline and teach their kids what to do, right or wrong, not the parents. And that's exactly the wrong attitude to have. But that's what's out there at the moment.
Gideon?
When I read stories like this, I wonder, is the behaviour getting worse, or are they just upping suspensions because teachers are and schools for that matter, are increasingly hogtied in terms of how they can discipline students? I mean, they did away with the cane, obviously, decades ago, and that was probably a good thing. But ever since then, you know, the number of excerpts saying you can't yell at kids, you can't say no to kids, you can't do this and that and everything else, it seems to me like suspension may very well be the easiest sort of option in many cases because it pushes it back onto parents. But as Scott rightly says, too many parents are dropping the ball when it comes to disciplining children in the first place. And as I've said before on this program, the biggest problem teachers have these days is that they're expected to double as social workers, and it's very, very unreasonable to expect them to do that. Yeah,
not unfair, but look, I just think we simultaneously expect so much of the schools, as you say, but you know, also don't empower the teacher to actually have control of the classroom. And I think for all of the chats about billions of dollars, and I mean billions of dollars, there's some basics here that says, I mean, look, again, as you say, Gideon, we've moved on from some of the dark old days with this stuff, but we also have to be very honest with ourselves, which is school is meant to be a microcosm of life, which means it's sometimes going to be unfair. There is an authority figure who at times will be unfair, but instead now it has become a microcosm, yes, of modern life in the wokest parts where you can appeal everything. Everything's contestable, nothing is just swallowed, and we all know certainly the attitudes that when we came home, and I'll say in my own situation, I came home, I was suspended. It didn't matter what excuse I had. Mum and Dad were pretty absolute, which was, bugger you, son, you're in trouble. That's it. Not let's go and argue it.
Absolutely, absolutely. That was, you know, again, my experience as well. If I got wrapped around the knuckles at school, then, you know, I'd be held to pay at home. But these days, you mete out punishment to a student, the next thing that happens is the parent marches down to the school and causes merry hell.
Yeah, it's way too frequent here.